The Fayette County Board of Education approved a budget of more than $800 million for the 2024-25 academic year. District leaders say with that funding, they're able to recruit and maintain more teachers, ensure student safety, and more.
WKYT's Grayson Passmore has more from Superintendent Demetrius Liggins after the final vote tonight.
There's absolutely zero concerns with this budget.
The approved Fayette County Public Schools 2024-25 working budget is $817 million with a general fund of $671 million. The board gave historic pay raises last year, averaging around 8%. This year, with an expected 1% average increase in salaries.
But one of the reasons why we saw greater cost perhaps than what was anticipated was because of the number of teachers and educators and staff who decided to stay in Fayette County, or the experienced folks in other districts who decided to come into Fayette County.
Board Chair Tyler Murphy says they can recruit and maintain more due to the pay increase, a new $250 classroom stipend, and the district's first paid parental leave policy. Superintendent Demetrius Liggins says they also have a large portion dedicated to school safety.
Ensuring that we have secure buildings, those also include ensuring that we have counselors and social workers and mental health specialists for our students, as well as a police force that is there to ensure their safety as well.
Liggins had said this budget reflected careful consideration because of the loss of COVID-era funding. He also addressed questions regarding positions that were cut at schools and if that affects this budget.
Every single year, based on the staffing formula, based on enrollment, based on student needs, based on what students desire to take, things are added and things are cut every single year. There's nothing new about that in 24-25 budget.
In Fayette County, Grayson Passmore, WKYT.
The budget approved in a 4-1 vote. The one no vote was board member Amanda Ferguson.